Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm Jen Wilson, and I'm here with my friend Amy Vetter. And we're here for Leadership Lunch Chat. We're so glad to be with you this Friday, this summer Friday, or almost summer, I guess. We're just about there at the summer solstice. And we have a kind of a hodgepodge of things, but we're continuing our discussion on generous leadership. And I guess that maybe the first thing that I will acknowledge is that we're also celebrating Juneteenth. Many people are off work, so maybe you are watching this while you're off work, or perhaps you're still at work, but we know a number of firms that have given the day off to folks, which we think is super. And we're so glad that Biden, signed a decree that causes Juneteenth now to be a federal holiday. And I think we're all really happy about that. So, and for many people of color, the answer is finally. Anyway, congratulations on that. And we're all happy for it. Happy to acknowledge that holiday and true freedom. And, there's a saying that until everyone is free, no one is free. And I really believe that. And so, we still have to keep working. There's so much work to be done before we really live in parity and before there are truly free people on this globe. So anyway, Amy and I thought that we might tackle today the discussion of turnover and in particular, kind of flip it and call it retention, engagement, motivation, inspiration, stickiness, whatever you want to call it, causing your people to feel like staying in our profession, at your firm, in their position perhaps. Not always, maybe there's other positions in your firm that would work for them better. But I am seeing article after article about unprecedented turnover or departures, resignations. They're calling, like there used to be monikers like the Great Depression. I read yesterday, Wall Street Journal was calling it I think it was Wall Street Journal calling it the Great Resignation. We're serious, and it's not just in the accounting profession. And so Amy and I thought we would just kind of explore what can we as leaders and generous leaders do about that. So Amy, I'm going to turn it over to you. You can get us started on that subject, and we'll see where it goes.
Well, I think number one, and I've seen some really good demonstrations of that in the last couple months with some firms I've worked with, is allowing the conversation to happen of people questioning their careers right now, not being afraid of that conversation, and also not allowing harm if someone says it. So, there's a number of firms that I work with doing mindfulness series. And one of the questions is, how are you feeling? And over the answers are, I'm not liking what I do. I'm not sure if this is, the career I want anymore. And and it comes out anonymously. And just because you don't have the conversation doesn't mean it's not going on for people. And if people feel like their career might be harmed by bringing it up or talking about it, they're not going to talk about it. And the only way to really elicit that is, to find ways to be transparent as a leader and talk about how hard it is. And also when you've been at a crossroads in your own career, because I think a lot of times when staff people, managers, partners look at others, they're like, well, they seem happy. They seem like, this is what they wanted. And you start kind of self-deprecating when you think, oh, well, they're a managing partner and look at how happy. And when you as a managing partner are saying, no, I had times in my career where I stopped and thought about, is this what I want to do? And when you go through those times of just observing the things that you don't like to do and what you do like to do and where we can help you, because the thing is, when we ignore it or not have the conversation, then someone will quit. And so if you want to catch it early, whether you want to have, private sessions right now or group sessions about this topic and allow people to feel supported and that the conversation is open, that will go a long way with people knowing that you care and that you are trying to make things better for them and allowing them to be part of the solution. Because I think part of the resignations is looking at, well, I don't want to go through this again. This could happen again. I don't want to go through it. So what can we do to solve now to make sure that that doesn't happen?
Right. Well, and they call those meetings, Amy, and HR or talent management, they call them stay interviews or re-recruiting. And it's not me sitting down with the team member and telling them all the good stuff about us and trying to like sell them on staying. That's not what that's intended to do. It's trying to be authentic and real, and recognizing that the whole world is in this sort of contemplation mode right now. But as we're starting to emerge from the pandemic, there is a lot of like, what's it all about? And is this all I'm made for? And should I be making a change? We're seeing that in the real estate market. People are like, I'm changing my house. I'm either going to sell it or I'm going to buy a new one, or I'm going to build something, or I'm going to tear out a wall or whatever. But there's all sorts of change happening in people's abodes. People are contemplating their relationships, and work is a relationship. It's a relationship with the entity. It's a relationship with the peers, the clients, the superior subordinates. And people are thinking about, like, is this all there is? And is this what I'm meant to do? So it's not abnormal to be thinking that way. And we can't make it feel scary to confess it, like you said. So, you want to sit down with these people. And I was talking to a number of leaders this week. I've had a whole bunch of exposure to a number of senior leaders inside firms this last 4 days before this day. And one of the things that they suggested when we talked about re-recruiting or stay interviews was not to have the direct manager always do it. But the direct manager is somebody that often we don't want to let down. They might actually be somebody that we don't like or that is causing us to feel like leaving.
Right.
But they could also be somebody we love dearly. And the idea of telling them that we're thinking of abandoning them makes us feel sick, so we don't want to tell them. So sometimes it's not the direct manager that should do this. And I think that firms should be systematic about it. I don't think we should just say, hey guys, if you feel like it, let's have some of these conversations with our people. I would figure out who my highest potential people are, and I'd have those conversations. I'd put down a list of who they are and who's going to have the conversation and the dates by when we're going to have them. And I would make sure that happens. Then I would go through the entire team. I think you have to start with the highest potentials. And some firms are sort of like, well, there's some people, they're on the path to partner. They are sold on us. They're a gimme. I don't need to talk to them. Those are the ones that we're seeing quit the last 6 weeks. People that are shocking have been resigning. And so please do not have a thing called, I already know how they feel. You have to talk to all of these people. And as Amy said, how are you really? And how are you feeling about the work? And then be quiet. Don't say anything and be okay with whatever they say. And don't try to say, yeah, but, or yeah, I felt that way once, but I got over it. Don't try to minimize, diminish, sell against it or anything. Just let the person talk and let's see where they are. And sometimes when somebody says something I don't totally understand or I don't like, I'll say more about that. Or when I feel like they have more to say, I'll just say more about that instead of like trying to step in and say anything myself or ask another question. Just say more about that. Or can you say a little more there? Or go on. I'll say go on, just to keep people going and really opening up, because it doesn't all come out probably at first. And I'm not saying everybody on your team is unhappy. That's not the case. I'm sure you'll find some people that are like, I'm good. It was hard, but I feel good about where I ended up or something, but there'll be others that'll say, I just don't think I can continue to work at this pace, or, whatever it is. I don't really like this work, or whatever their feelings are, and let them have them, and then start to say, so what are you thinking of, how can I help? What are you thinking about doing about these feelings? What are you picturing? I like to say that. What do you picture? What would resolve this for you? What are you picturing resolving it? Then they could say, I was thinking about quitting, or I've been talking to some clients about a possible job, or whatever they're going to say. But what you want to do is know their truth. We always say, that, like you said, Amy, the truth is there whether you want to know it or not. And it will be coming up. The hurt feelings will come up. You know what I mean? That when they hand you the resignation or whatever it is, so why not just get it out now? And then you can plan your capacity. You can plan your fall. You can plan the rest of your year. And maybe you can sell them back in. Maybe you can help shift something for them materially that would make a huge difference. Maybe not. Maybe you just have to plan that they're going to leave you, and try to make that departure as positive, and humane and empowering for you both as possible.
Yeah, and I think it's an important point when, a lot of times you have talked about selfish interest, but being unselfish in these conversations. And part of being unselfish might be that it is the right time for someone to leave, and you might have other connections, and you might get another year out of them while you're helping them find the best place for them with clients or connections and so forth. But I think in those conversations, it's really important to not have as far as what you want selfishly as a leader, of where you want that person to be.
Yes.
So, and because you want that partner or manager or staff person in a certain department or leading a certain team, and maybe they're just unhappy. Maybe that's the place that they're not happy. They don't like the work, or they're getting bored with it, that they want some other opportunities to learn. And when you're having those conversations, beyond, listening to what they might be upset about and so forth, where can you make it constructive of like, well, what are your interests, or what are you curious about? Like, what other parts of our client work, could interest you, and maybe go over some of it too, because a lot of times, people are siloed in their departments and they don't even know you're working on data analytics in a department, or blockchain,
right,
or, you're looking into environmental and sustainability, new regulation and that sort of thing. So they might not even know those things are on the table. And when you start talking about, well, let's talk about some of the things that the firm is doing right now, what piques your interest? And maybe, not right away they're moving from a department, but they can be doing small projects on these different areas that really spike their interest, to see if that's an area that they would like to go into and further their knowledge in, or they want to take other training or CPE, or go back to school for something, get a certificate, whatever it is. Try to draw out what would excite them, so
right,
that you can, really get that flavor of, well, you don't have to leave to get that other experience. We actually have it here. And what we'll need is your help in the transition in your position. So it may not be tomorrow, but let's actively look of who would be your bench strength. And we could start training up while you take on some other projects and transition you into your next best place. And it's always good to identify where your bench strength is and who's going to succeed people. And that should be part of the planning process as well, so that when times like this happen or people quit, it's not a gap, that you have planning behind this, that who can take over certain work.
right. And the whole idea of cross training, and two people at least that know the clients, and all of those things start to come into play during this great resignation, if you will. Things that we should have done to plan that sort of redundancy. Well, the other thought that I had there is that, bigger firms, they have multiple offices around the country. Some of them have international components that they could send their folks out for international assignments, which I know a lot of younger people are feeling like I need to be in a different country, or I need to have that experience in my lifetime, and I want to do it now. And so they picture, I can't leave. They aren't going to let me out of this job. They're not going to let me go to a different office. They're not going to let me go to a different department. They feel very tied down often. And we hear this, they'll say that. And we're like, have you even asked what other options there are? Most firms don't want to lose their investment in the person. But you're right, Amy, I have had young people say, hey, I really don't like this kind of audit work. And I have a blend of this kind and that kind, and I don't like this kind. And they're not going to let me out of it. They're going to make me keep doing it because they don't have anyone else. Well, if that's the case, they're going to keep doing that until they quit. Then you'll let someone else do it. And you won't have that transition you're talking about, Amy, where we could train somebody or anything, because they're going to quit and give 2 weeks notice and want to get out of there. So it's just goofy to hold on to people and force them for our selfish interest reasons, because it's easier for us. They already know the jobs. It's more efficient. The clients already know them. I'm just going to hold on to them as long as I can and turn a blind eye to the fact that they're not happy. And that's not what great leaders do. That's what selfish leaders do. So we have to avoid that for sure.
And I know as a leader, and as a leader, one of the hardest parts is the staffing and keeping people happy and not wanting people to shift what they're doing because it makes it hard on us, right? Like that, it just immediately does. That's your first reaction. You can't help it. There is always going to be that piece of like, oh gosh, now I'm going to have to work 10 times harder until we, can get someone to fill this role and so forth. So we've got that going on in our mind. And how do we stop the talk so we can solve? And I think, for me, a lot of times when I observe that happening for me, I'm like, okay, just step back, think about, is this as bad as what do they actually do? Who could do, could some of their role be broken up amongst multiple people? And then start just taking action. And, a lot of times we get in that, paralysis mode that we're overwhelmed too. We're overwhelmed with work. So no one's saying anyone's bad, in this situation, because I think all of us struggle with that because there's, so much work to do. But then it's kind of taking an assessment of which clients should maybe we eliminate because it's stressing the staff out too much. What other solutions could we start looking at, and upping prices on other clients? Because in order to give the space to the staff that they need so they aren't working so much overtime and they do have more quality of life, we've got to make some business decisions too. And those are tough, right? It's tough to tell a client you no longer can serve them, as long as you find a graceful way to give them to somebody else, but they might not be a fit for your firm anymore. And all of the parameters around how you run your business and the time the staff need to do the work. And so if the staff are being pushed and they're overwhelmed, there's really nothing, like you can't hide.
No, you can't. And you have to finish the cycle. You finish the cycle of service and then step back and make some changes. Right. And it's a little bit like, like the firm is sort of a tree, and what happens is we sell a bunch of stuff and it turns into kind of a bush or something. And the bush these days is suffocating the staff. It's crowding us all out. None of us can move inside the huge branches of this bush, and we need to prune the bottom of this thing and turn it back into a tree and something we can live under. Presently, we're all not, it's not comfortable. And you're not supposed to keep every client you ever had, and you're not supposed to keep all the clients that don't pay you and don't pay you timely and don't value your services. We're also in a supply demand market, folks. Always, that's the economic model of our market. And I don't know if you've noticed, but demand is up and supply of resources is low, very, very, very depressed. So when demand is up and supply is down, prices go up. That's called economics 101. So prices should be going up. Fees should be going up big time. And clients who are unwilling to pay that should not be clients because they're not honoring the fact that your labor is costing you so much more. And what's really strange is most of our clients are finance folks. And many of them, the main decision makers, have an accounting degree. Maybe they have their CPA license. Not the individual ones, but the corporate ones. They have the same labor shortage we have. It's not like they have to be told there's a labor shortage. They know. So anyway, that's another strategy that we could give our people some hope. These ideas of culling clients, really reducing the client load where appropriate and raising fees, so that our team members feel like, okay, the firm's on the way to these tough business model decision-making points, and they're starting to make some action happen in our changed model because they want a new model. Our young people want a new model, and maybe that's not next week because we're going to have a guest next week on generous leadership, but maybe the week after might be a holiday week, so we'll have to look at that. But 2 weeks from now, let's try to remember to talk about business model shifts and really kind of dig in on that, because I think there's a bunch, and your people will stay if they thought you were going to make the business of public accounting more practical, more inviting, and more sustainable for the future. More inviting, though, for them to own it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, great conversation today, Amy. Thank you so much for participating, and thanks everybody for watching. And we welcome you next week when we will have a guest on generous leadership. So please join us then. Thanks all.